We're streaming live to public and we're ready to start the meeting.
Okay, we'll call the February 2021 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting to order. The first item on our agenda, is an election of chairperson and secretary for the commission. Rob, how is this supposed to go exactly, or
you'd accept nominations from the floor for that position, and then take a vote on those nominated.
Okay, is there a nomination for chair?
I nominate Patty Baker for chair of the Planning and Zoning Commission.
I second.
Is there any other nominations? All right, no other nominations, so I'll take the votes. Rogoff,
Yes.
Paolozzi,
Yes.
Feniger,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
and Baker.
I'll abstain, I guess. Okay, how about for secretary, any nominations?
I nominate Judy Feniger for secretary.
I'll second.
Okay, I'm just writing down who did that. Any other nominations? All right, hearing none, we'll take the vote on Judy Feniger for secretary. Paolozzi,
Aye.
Feniger,
Abstain.
Davis,
Aye.
Baker,
Aye.
and Rogoff.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. I guess we're set for another year. The next item is something that came to us from council, that to rezone a number of parcels of land that are owned by the village. I wasn't actually aware of all of these, but yeah, here it is showing, Rob's got it up on the
Yep.
screen. So the first picture shows what came through with Safe Grove Hill. It's supposed to become a park there at West Cottage and North Main. And then there's another parcel that looks like it was donated by, I guess, a resident. Is that right, Rob? Cochran?
Yes, that's the green parcel where my cursor is.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can get this to.
Do you want me to give some explanation?
That would be great, Erin.
Sure, Aaron's here, yes.
Thank you guys for taking this, because we sent it to you. So this entire document started because of two parcels. First is the parcel that we received after the Save Grove Hill campaign. So you see there's about, I want to say it's about a third of an acre at the lower portion of Grove Hill, the corner of Cottage and Main, that belongs to the village. The deed is passed, is like signed and all that kind of stuff. We do have a conservation easement. And so that needs to obviously be moved out of a residential district and into a proper zoned district. So because of the conservation easement, I guess maybe we go towards conservation. It could be a park though, too, if you guys felt strongly. I'm really sort of neutral on it. And then the other parcel ending in 032 off of the river was donated to the village, gosh, maybe 10 years ago by the Corcorans when they built their house down at the end of West Washington. And that lot's actually a couple acres. It owns a huge portion of the riverbed. It's one of the old mill properties. And so, if you as a private citizen own that, the liability is very different if someone falls in the river than if the village owns it. And we do have a conservation agreement essentially on that as well. We can't really develop it based on the donation agreement. So those two both really should probably be conservation. I think from just a general housekeeping point of view, it's a little tidier to call them conservation. So it started because, again, that Grove Hill property. And then Rob, can you go to the other graphic?
Sure.
Or do you want me to, or are there any questions on those two? I guess I could answer any questions on that before we go to the other section of land.
So the Cochrans are at 108.
Say that again?
The Cochrans are at 108 West Washington, and they donated the portion across the river from them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. It's a long story. I won't bore you with
That's
it all,
okay.
but
Yep.
Roseanne Pasalacqua owned that land and the parcel next to it. And when we were splitting up the land and I was helping her decide what to do with it, we commissioned a survey and found out that when the Williams Foundry was in business, they had a bridge that went across the river to the other side. And they also had some industrial activities going up the river further to the east. And it turned out that all that land was owned by her, and nobody knew that for about 100 years. So when she sold the land to the other neighbors, we didn't know it, but by the time we sold to Cochran, we did. And they made a deal that she would sell them all the land because we couldn't really split it off, but she would have a period of time to try and donate it or sell it to somebody who's adjacent. And she couldn't find anybody. So she let Cochran keep it, and then Cochran donated it to the village.
Mhm.
And obviously we're not building anything in the middle of the river. And when you look at our park designation, it's really about, I mean, what does it say? Ball fields, pools, and playgrounds. So obviously we're not doing that down there. So conservation plus the easement is really just a more logical space.
The only question I have, Dale or Aaron, the Cochrans, do they have a say, B, a preference?
Yeah, I talked to Rich.
Yeah.
And he was fine
No.
with it.
No, wrong Cochran.
Yeah, different
Oh.
Cochran.
Sorry. I talked to Mike. Sorry.
Yeah, Mike. I was like, wait a minute.
I
I
did
only
talk-
know a Mike Cochran.
I'm sure Rich would be fine with this too, but Mike Corcoran was fine with this and agreed that it would be a better fit in the conservation district versus parks.
Okay.
The only thing you should know is the Cochrans retain the right to gain access to the property.
Yep.
No big deal, and it shouldn't affect us doing the rezoning, but you should be aware of that.
Yeah. And
So
we can't
this land-
develop it with it.
Sorry, is this land is owned by them, or it's been transferred? So it's owned by the village?
The village.
It's owned by the
Village.
village.
It's
Yeah.
village
Okay.
land
Village,
with
yes.
and there's a conservation easement with it where we're not allowed to develop it. And then they have some rights to access the land, but it's also public land, so they could do that anyway. But Dale could
Right.
probably speak to more of the details because, you know.
That covers it.
Land conservation.
And then what's the R1 parcel that kind of envelops it?
Oh, that's owned
is
by
that the
someone else.
house? What's that?
That's not Rob Weber's house. That's undeveloped land.
That belongs
Um,
to an individual party?
No, actually, part of it is Rob Weber's.
No, he's
Um,
farther to the left, isn't he?
No, see where it says village parcel number 932?
I'm bringing it up.
You can't really see it, but he would be just to the left of that. That
Yeah.
piece is owned by Tony, Tony Artino. Yeah, thanks, Harry. Through, I think it's called LMT Warehouse. Yeah, LMT Warehouse.
LLC.
Yeah.
Aaron or
There-
Dale, my question always is, when we change zoning, are there others, and we've just talked about neighbors, but if it's village land, sometimes people in the village have opinions on why something should or shouldn't be. I don't see how that would be the case with these, but I always like to ask that question. Is there anybody else who might have a different opinion of how this should be zoned?
Yeah, so I brought it up at a council meeting and absolutely nobody, and the newspaper covered it. I have had 0 people reach out to me.
Rob,
And
can you
since
put
they're both covered,
the original map up? Because it might be easier to get a perspective on it. These parcels are village owned or along the river, or they're land that we already have in a parks district that we might want to put in conservation.
and they
And,
have
you know-
conservation easements on them. So it's even if a bunch of people in the village didn't like the idea of making them conservation, they're
Correct.
legally required to be conserved. So
Yes.
Um,
Yeah, it makes perfect sense to me, but that isn't always the same
Sure.
as.
Scroll down, Rob, because you're missing the bottom part. There you go.
So,
That's where the other pieces are.
Judy, you know, like all zoning changes, the council will have a public hearing on this.
Right.
Yeah.
And it'll be well advertised and,
Sure.
so, you know, we're just gonna, if we recommend this, then we're recommending it to council. And it'll be put into ordinance form and there'll be a public hearing. So there'll be ample opportunity for people, you know, to see what we're doing and to comment on it.
Right, I understand.
So,
Rob, can you scroll down further?
Yeah.
All the way to the
So-
bottom. There you go.
this
There you
this
go.
next section is slope, basically, of the river. It's the top, the northern piece is the section just below the Mill Street sidewalk, which is, if you've ever looked at it, basically a sheer cliff, but you know, dirt, Ohio dirt. And then the south side, it goes basically from the salon and what was a dentist office or whatever, all the way down along the river to Cleveland Street. And the village recently acquired the parcel that's zoned as R150. And that was, it went into the village land bank through the foreclosure process after, you know, a number of years of not paying taxes. And then this map's a little misleading because Low Street obviously doesn't actually connect to Vincent like that. And we have a grant that we received from ODNR a couple years ago, maybe 2 years ago now. And eventually what we'll have is a pathway that goes from the Vincent Street Arboretum down along an old quarry road along the lower port into the floodplain of the river and then back up to the Cleveland Street Bridge. And this is more just, it's again, same kind of concept with the other land where this is all slope. It should be conserved because there's really no use for the land other than a simple trail. The trail will be obviously designed with, you know, minimal environmental impacts and considering the flooding nature of it. But it'll be a nice path for the village because it'll create this very nice sort of like off-road loop around the downtown area. And again, it's all slope, old former quarry land. Apparently we pulled rocks out of this area at one point. So big steep slopes, can't really do anything with it other than, you know, conserve it so that the slope stays intact.
Okay. I think it makes, seems like it makes total sense. That's also riparian setback for
Yes.
all these parcels, or
Mhm.
except for the Grove Hill one. So,
Oh, and just to be super clear, like this does not touch Riverside Park, like at all. Like there's maybe like 2 feet that adjoins the parcel that's actually Riverside, but like it does not touch what we consider Riverside Park. None of the improved park spaces are part of this land, part of this at all.
did anybody else on the commission have questions or comments? If there aren't any, I'd like to make a motion that we recommend to council changing the zoning designation for all of these parcels to conservation. That seems the best designation. Do we need to do a separate motion for each parcel, Rob, or?
No, you can do them all together as a package.
Can I ask,
Unless it
hey
doesn't.
Patty, before you make a motion, can I ask Dale a quick question?
Yes.
Hey Dale, they have a lot of, planning and zoning has a lot of items that they're considering. Rather than having like 3 or 4 different zoning hearings, my hope would be to consolidate them. If they make a motion and send this to council, do we have to immediately set the zoning hearing at council, or can we wait until they've had a chance to work through their other work before we do the zoning hearing in order to consolidate?
No, you're supposed to set the hearing when it comes back to you. So I was just going to say this, that I don't think you should make your motion yet because you're going to do this all as one packet. That's what we talked about before the meeting
Yeah.
started. So I would hold off and do it at once.
Okay,
Do
so
all of what is one packet?
This rezoning, the changes to the variance, whatever other text changes we make, do it all in one ordinance.
so my goal would be to have less, last year we had like 3 different zoning hearings in the first half of the year. And so my hope would just be to have less of those and consolidate the work as you guys send it to us. So I'm happy if you guys just want to leave this on your docket and vote on it when you're ready to send a couple other items to council for hearing.
Okay, so you're talking about completely unrelated items. that you
Yes.
Well, we could do separate ordinances for this rezoning of the map, I'm sorry, the map change, and then do the text changes in a separate ordinance. I mean, you could do them in one, but we could certainly have two different ones.
Right, but we could have 2 ordinances and 1 zoning hearing.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
So we just kind of put this on.
Set it
take
aside for now.
the agenda and just carry it forward for a couple meetings. Is that what you're suggesting, Dale?
I would carry forward till the March meeting, and then it'll come back to, it would come back to council at its second March meeting. So you could wait till the April meeting, and then council could take it at the second April meeting and put it up for public hearing at the end of May.
Okay.
That would give you guys some time to get other stuff to us as well.
Okay, I mean, I assume there's no urgency to this. Nothing's gonna happen to these parcels between now and then anyway, so,
Yeah, it's not urgent.
okay.
Cool. Well, thank you guys. If you have any questions, let me
Unusual
know.
for somebody to ask us to go slower than usual. All right, thank you, Erin.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Erin.
guys.
Thanks.
Bye.
Okay, so I guess we will just hold on to that. And then the next item on the agenda is chapter 1111, which Dale wrote up an ordinance that I think everybody should have received.
I'll get it up here in a second.
Yeah, Rob sent it out last week, I believe. And
Everyone should see it now.
Oh, I think it was more than a week ago. Rob, when did I get that to you?
It was about 2 weeks ago, and then about a week ago, I sent it to P&Z last week.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time finding it, but it's,
Yeah, but in the meantime, I had suggested some changes and sent those to Dale. I think he agreed with them. And then I sent them to the rest of P&Z today. And one thing that I noticed when looking at 10G, 10G is titled Action by Council. And now you've included action by BZA and other things in there, appeals. So I thought maybe we make it a different section and call it time to appeal instead of action by council.
let me look at the
That's what I.
current codified. Yeah, 111110, the heading is action by council. But why are you saying you want to move it somewhere else?
No, I don't want to move it.
Oh, what is?
I've got Nancy's.
Call it something different because it's more than action. It's final decision either by Board of Zoning Appeals or council.
Nancy, is that one of the ones you sent to us today?
Yes.
So you're saying time period to appeal rather than,
Or just time to appeal.
Can someone give me the genesis of why we're looking at this?
oh yeah, I think you weren't here last time. Is that right, Wendy? I forget. I think you were not at our last meeting.
No, it was late.
Okay, so maybe that was it. Rob, do you want to explain?
Sure. We wanted to add some code language to allow, to actually further define when an action of a board or a commission is official, and also to allow for some relief in the case of an administrative error. So that if there was a date error and a notice that went out, that somebody's appeal rights would not end due to the action of the village in an official letter. So we wanted to make sure that if that we did further define that period, and then also provide for some relief if there was an error on our behalf and not that of the applicant.
Okay. So
Hey,
are we
What,
looking
what,
at a frame that we want to extend it or shorten?
I think it's just, okay. Dale, do you want to
It's the-
explain
Sure.
in a nutshell,
re-
what your ordinance says?
Yeah, it's really to clarify. It's not to shorten or increase.
Right.
But before I explain that, what I'm thinking is based on what Nancy said, I think this might be a good idea, is to create an 1111.11 and move all of this new G into that section. That's what Rob has up on the screen now. Okay.
I printed it too. So
I like that idea.
Yeah. Let me pull that back up. What happened is we had a couple appeals that came up to council from the BZA, and some issues arose as to when you can appeal and what happens if either information is given wrong to the applicant or the deadlines or whatever. So we've decided we ought to modify the code so that in the event that somebody is given the wrong information, that they would still have time to appeal. This happened with on Solither Lane. Marino was given a deadline later than the actual deadline, and so the Board of Zoning Appeals was not able to hear their appeal. So that's what Section 1 is trying to fix.
okay.
Section 2 is we decided to expand on the language that's there, is to provide that the time to appeal to the courts when you're appealing from either the BZA or council, what date it begins to run, because there's a discrepancy in Ohio law. In general, different districts have had different ideas as to when the 30 days to appeal the court starts to run. And so we wanted to put in a provision that it starts to run when the administrator gives notice of the final decision of the Board of Zoning Appeals or council, so that it doesn't, some courts have said it begins to run when the minutes are approved, which in the case of the Board of Zoning Appeals could be 3 or 4 or 5 months later, because we've been running behind on getting the minutes approved, or there may not be a meeting. So you could have a wild lapse of time before that appeal would start to run. So we want it to run when the people who have a right to get this notice, which is either the applicant originally or somebody who's appealed to the board, or who's appealed it and it's at their request it went to council. And if we're giving them notice, they would have to appeal within 30 days from when Rob sends that notice out to them.
Dale, aren't all these things relevant to people that take issue with a decision made by a ABR or P&Z as well?
Yeah, it could be a decision of the zoning administrator, the ABR, or planning commission. And then
So-
it also applies, it deals with it just when appeals are taken from the BZA decision by petition of 3 council members.
Just because there's a lot of the language in here just is BZA. I don't know if that's what you were getting to, Nancy, or not. But how do we make this relevant?
That's the first section. What I sent isn't either of these 2 sections. What I sent was at the beginning of that chapter, the very beginning of that chapter.
Right.
And that deals with any appeal from any of the 11103A that isn't part of this ordinance.
Right.
I've got Nancy's proposals on the screen now.
Do you think 10 days is sufficient?
That's what it's been.
So we
For-
want to extend it? I thought I heard. give-
No, we don't want to.
No.
Extend.
I don't
No.
think that we weren't talking about changing any of the times, either making shorter or longer. It was just to make sure that it was clear what the timeframes were. And then to put in a provision that if notice is not given correctly by the village, that it would not adversely affect the person who should have gotten the notice or who.
Okay,
The applicant from their,
Yeah.
it wouldn't end their application
okay.
or their appeal.
Well, Dale, I don't know. Have you read what Nancy provided?
Yeah.
Do you
She
think
and I,
that solves the issue or?
yeah, I'm okay with, although I'm not sure, I don't know what version this was, but I thought Nancy and I tweaked the language a little bit and updated it. I don't know if this is it or not.
I think that it is. Because
This does,
I had copied your section from G up there, and so it was saying council, so I took all that out.
Yeah, no, right. Yeah,
But
but
this
in
just
1111.11, you moved to section 2 of the ordinance. And I'm wondering whether we want to take the existing sentence from 1111.10G and move that over to become part of 1111.11.
I thought I did.
Um,
I thought I took the whole thing.
You took what was in my draft ordinance, but 1111.10G says the applicant or any such interested party who is harmed by action of council may appeal council's decision pursuant to Ohio Revised Code Chapter 2506. That is not part of what's in here.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think I just was going off your ordinance. I don't think I went back to the
Right.
to the
Yeah,
chapter.
that's fine.
isn't it the last sentence showing there, Dale?
I see it there.
No.
Oh.
No, that's different.
It
Different
matches
language.
what I have in the ordinance here. The ordinance that you sent us.
No, Patty, that's not what we're saying.
Oh,
I'm saying if you go look at existing 1111.10,
oh,
I've got
yeah,
that.
Rob's kind of, I'm saying what's in G, we could move that out of 1111.10 and put that into this new
Okay.
1111.11.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, yeah,
Right. Yeah, that's kind of what I intended, and I guess I just thought that it was already in. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
okay. So the new 11.11 would be what Nancy had, but incorporating that one sentence from the existing,
G.
G.
yeah,
Yeah, that would be the first sentence. And then we would
okay.
put in everything else that you're seeing on the screen right now.
Which is what you had written in your ordinance.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. The top
then-
part, if Rob, if you could scroll back.
Hold on, give me 1 second.
Okay.
Oh, hold on. Oh, it's not letting me do what I want to do with it.
There you go. Okay.
I go to the top here.
Stop. Yep, you're good. Okay, so this is what Nancy and I tweaked the language on. My ordinance draft, let me get that back up. Oh, I lost it.
I can,
Oh, I got it.
if you want.
Okay.
Dale.
Yeah. So all I was doing was adding a subsection E to 111103. And what Nancy wanted to do was make some more changes in 111103, which is what you see on the screen. And she and I went through that and we were okay with it.
So it's basically keeping the same times that we've always had, but just kind of making it very clear that the notice will be by email or postal service. That's when the clock starts ticking. And yeah, that's about all it says, right?
Yeah, and it's basically the same language that's in the last section in G, in Dale's ordinance. You know, it's generally
Right.
the same kind of language. It sets a definite time.
Yeah.
When the time period starts to run, which would be the date of the letter that the administrator or whoever sends out about the decision.
Yeah, so what we were trying to accomplish is if the administrator makes a decision, he gives notice, and that's what kicks off the 10 days to file your appeal to the Board of Zoning Appeals or to file a variance, whatever you want to do. And that's what C is all about now. And then we added E, which is the saving grace if we made a mistake and gave the applicant the wrong information, it gives him more time to appeal.
So you're saying E will be added. So we'll have A, B, and C that's shown on the screen here that Nancy has. Then you're also going to have the E from your ordinance.
Yeah, but we're also going to keep D.
Yes.
D is, yeah.
Okay. So E will be a brand new section.
Right.
So what Nancy wrote in A, B, and C does not replace E. E is going to be added as well.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Nancy's changes didn't have anything to do with what we said. E is to when we make a mistake. ABC is to clarify giving notice and when time starts to run to appeal.
And you're comfortable having a clause in here like this, Dale? Is it kind of unusual for zoning code to have this sort of thing, or no?
What item are you talking about?
The aggrieved party, just the whole concept of of the administrative error.
I don't know of any other community that has it. I don't think I've seen it before. But when Rob and I first talked about it, we both said, we don't want that to happen again to somebody. And so we thought we ought to put that provision in here so that we can give the board jurisdiction that it didn't have in that Solitaire Lane case.
I guess it would be a very, very rare occurrence when that would happen. It hasn't really happened in many communities. So,
well, I mean, hopefully the changes to this to section A at the beginning, hopefully that would obviate the need for that, because it's giving a definite time frame, which we didn't have before. It just was kind of nebulous when so and so and so and so make a decision or give back, deny a permit and all those things. And so who knows when the time would have started running. So that's the idea of that section, is to make a definite time so that hopefully that other section wouldn't be needed.
So it's not the date of the meeting anymore, or not that it ever necessarily was, but it's not the date of the meeting where a decision's made. It's when the notice is given by the administrator.
Right.
Right.
I'm fine with all of this. If Dale and Nancy, it sounds like you've gone through it very carefully. And did anyone on the commission want to make any comments or have any questions about it? Because I still just see a lot of Board of Zoning Appeals in C and E and the part that will become 1111.11. I don't know when you've got to recreate this in ordinance form, right, Dale? Because we're going to combine what Nancy's got here and what you've got.
Yeah, I've got to read through the ordinance.
Right.
Yeah.
So we'll get a final copy, another copy of this for the next.
Well, you're
meeting?
not, yeah, because you're not going to recommend it back to council tonight. So
Okay.
I'll
good.
have it for you for the next meeting.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. I just would
Okay,
like.
so I think, yeah, so we don't need to make a motion on it, but I think it sounds like we're all agreed that like, that it makes, we're all, in agreement with doing what you and Nancy have cobbled together with her A, B, and C, your E for 111103, and then making 1111.10G, making that a new 1111.11.
Yes.
Okay. And I just don't see like any A or B in there. So like if you have an A or B decision to allow a demolition, or doesn't the same time frame thing still apply in that case?
Yes, because 111103 would cover action by any administrative board. If you look at the first sentence, it's appeals shall be considered by the Board of Zoning Appeals after formal action by
Mhm.
any officer, board, or commission.
So BZA is hearing the appeals from
Mhm.
decisions from those other boards.
Mhm.
So that's why,
Right.
that's why BZA is referenced in the 1111 10 section.
Okay. Okay, are we ready to move on from this, and we'll get a new version of the ordinance from Dale next time?
Sure.
Okay. Hey, look at us moving along. I think, Rob, when you have a minute, if you can switch back to the agenda, I think it's accessory.
Yeah, it's accessory buildings and structures.
Yeah.
So this is what I, at least what I'm suggesting to do about the garage height and at least to some extent the size of the garage. Bringing it back to the original 18 feet that we started out with.
So I guess.
And I also suggest moving the thing that was at number 7 at the end that says no portion of an accessory building may be used or occupied for residential use. I would suggest moving that to the beginning of this section, right after the introductory paragraph. And I guess renumbering it as, I don't know, maybe, I guess it would be A and then renumber the rest of them so that it stands alone by itself at the beginning. And so it's clear before you get into any of the other details of your accessory structure that you can't have it for residential use instead of sticking it at the end where it's been.
So we were going to have Julie write something up to poll council. We'll see what they thought about it. But which we can still do. But in the interest of trying to not over-regulate and change things, this sort of seems like a really simple solution. It doesn't add or take anything away from what we've already got. This just moving the statement that it can't be a residence to the front. And I mean, that should be enforceable. And that seems to cover the concern that was raised by some of the buildings that Harry was showing us last time. Personally, I'm not offended by somebody wanting to use their accessory garage to set up a ping pong table and play ping pong with their kids instead of park their car in it. But I don't think it's appropriate for it to become another dwelling. And we already say that in a single family district, each lot can only have one dwelling. So if we just kind of emphasize that, it seems like that solves the issue. You're always going to have people pushing the boundaries, but if that's the rule, then that solves what I was thinking could be a potential problem. Does anybody do we want to go through and voice an opinion on how to approach this whole subject? Do we want to look at more, we were talking about things like changing square footage, changing numbers. This just seems like it gets to the crux of the matter in a very simple way. Judy, do you have any thoughts?
Patty, can I ask you if I want to clarify something?
Mhm.
If I understand the changes you want to make in 112504A, in the very beginning, we're going to move what's number 7 up to the top, because that's the one that says you can't have it be occupied for residential use. And I think we need to say more than that, because somebody could say, well, a garage is a residential use. So I think we want to make it clear that you can't sleep there or occupy it like a dwelling. And then we're going to take away the ARB's ability to allow the height to increase to 22 feet.
Well, that seems like it's a separate, I guess those don't have to go hand in hand.
No,
I'd
I
like
know,
to
but I thought
say-
that, yeah.
I think
I'm
we're
sorry.
talking as if this is a foregone conclusion. And I disagree with both of those items that you've just raised. So I just wanted to put that out there. This is not a foregone conclusion. I think there's an opposing opinion that needs to be considered. And Patty, I sent you a 4-page email as per your request in our last meeting last week about that. And I'm concerned that this is brought up today as if this is a foregone conclusion and we are going to address them one little bit at a time without considering the holistic impact to our constituents, with an understanding of the macro trends in this country, both economically and personally, I guess is the right word, for people and families.
It's not, I'm not treating it as a foregone conclusion. I'm presenting it because Nancy showed this as a possible way to address what we were talking about last time without going into a whole bunch of legislation. This is already in our code. It's always been in our code. That's the definition of a single family district, is that you choose to live in a single family zone district, assuming that there will be one residence per lot. So
Again, it might be in the code today. I just don't want to compound the issue without us and everybody considering the changing environment. Having again, one macro trend that I pointed out is the aging population. Having the ability to have our parents move in accessory structure as we care for them should be something considered. It's going to happen. You guys don't realize this. I'm in this industry, but we're not going to have room for all of the boomer generation in a short decade in the nursing homes and the assisted living facilities. If these nursing homes, if they built 4 times as many buildings across this country, we still wouldn't have enough beds. So this is a huge macro trend in our country, impacted by the aging population that we'll need to consider. Our residents are going to want to care for their family members and as they age. And by keeping this in our code and nailing an additional enforcement into it today or this week or this month is, I think, a gross mistake.
This is not adding anything enforcement.
I understand that. I don't think
Just moving
should
one
be
section from the.
reaffirmed. I do not believe it should be reaffirmed by moving this sentence or doing anything at this date and
This is-
time.
This is-
Unless we, because
hold on.
I think it should be stricken. I actually think it should be taken out.
So-
then we
so
can vote
Nicole-
on it and make a recommendation or not, and we'll vote on it. And that's, and
Yeah.
council.
I don't think we do this appropriately. I think we need to have a discussion on macro trends and everything that I put in that email for you, Patty, to discuss what's happening in this village, in this country. We're already past the tipping point of accessory structures that are outfitted or can be outfitted, already outfitted, can be outfitted, are being used as in-law suites and college student suites, etc. We've passed that tipping point. I think this is old, arcane language and does not take into account the future of this village and this country.
Nicole, so I think we've heard your viewpoint loud and clear. I don't know that, I know you're in the industry, but I don't know that you can say the village has gone tipping point of one thing or another.
I think the
And I don't
village
think
has,
we've
if we
had-
counted the number of accessory structures that are already being used, we're talking barns, we're talking converted garages.
How many are
We're
there?
talking,
How many are there?
there's plenty. In
How
my
many is
neighborhood, there's
plenty?
plenty.
And plenty
I
is,
don't think this is,
So okay, Patty, that's my point. Let's do an analysis. Let's figure out how many there are. Let's not just make a judgment call because we have one personal opinion. Let's talk to our constituents. That's what I said last month. I said, let's talk to people. Ask them what they're using these things for. Why did they move in with a house with a 1,000 square foot barn on their lot? What did they think? What were they planning? Who do they want to care for?
Nicole,
This
it's
is not
our
something.
responsibility to do
It is
this.
our responsibility to do justice before we just keep
Nicole.
willy-nilly adding code.
Nicole,
you're not, this is not adding code. What you're suggesting is that we essentially take away the concept of single family zoning. And I don't think there's an appetite among many
You
people.
don't think,
to
but you
take away
don't
the
know. We don't
designation of-
know that. We don't know whether your thought is accurate.
Then-
or
Then we vote on it on this board and pass it to
major
council,
representation.
and they have a public hearing, and that's where the decision is finally made.
My suggestion is we actually talk to people first before we start
You're welcome to talk to
reaffirming language.
our job to do this.
Before
Can we hear
it's our
from
job.
Nicole? We've heard your opinion loud and clear. Could we hear from perhaps Judy or Wendy? Or maybe Nancy without her being interrupted?
I'll go.
Okay, Wendy.
I'm in real estate in the village, have been for 18 years. I would say that the majority of the people do not buy homes because of the accessory building. My experience has been that most of the people that are looking for in-law suites for elderly and aging parents are looking for something on the first floor and adjacent to the building, not on a second floor above a barn. It is also my opinion that we have not been impacted negatively by not being able to have multi-dwellings or dual dwellings on properties. I've also, you may or may not agree with me, Nicole, but that has been my experience. I have found that it has not been an advantage or a disadvantage to have a barn with space beside it, because one, a lot of people don't want the extra cost of that space, maintaining and updating that extra space, or want to own a business of running it.
Oh no, you're frozen.
People have inquired, and when people have inquired about it, and when they have inquired, they've been told that what the ordinances are, and they say, okay, all right, so we can't have it. I
Do they not
Single-
do it, or they just do it without telling anybody? Are you
I-
telling me you haven't sold a house that utilized their barn as an office for years?
We're talking
For
about
the
a
entire
residential
ownership.
dwelling, Nicole. Nicole, we're not talking about
I'm ta-
offices. We're
But
talking
there's
about
two
dwelling.
macro trends that I emailed you about, Patty. There's
Yes.
two macro trends. One is the work from home macro trend that was accelerated by decades due to COVID. And the other one is the aging population. These are two macro trends. And there are many more that we're not considering when we just say, my opinion is this, or my historic experience is that. It's
Nicole,
not
you were just
considering
talking
these
about your
macro trends.
historic experience with your business. So don't
Not
bash Wendy for
historic.
talking about
It's,
her
I'm
historic.
not bashing Wendy. I love Wendy. She's one of my best friends in this town, and I disagree with her all the time, and I still love her. I'm not bashing Wendy. I do
Well,
not
you're
bash
saying
people.
her
My
historic
point is,
experience.
mine is not coming from historic experience. Mine is coming from studying the future of this economy in this country, because that's why I'm building this business that I've been building. That is based on where we're going. And I totally respect Wendy. She's my real estate agent. I wouldn't go to anybody else in this town. So I'm just saying our historic experience may not be what's happening now and in the future and what people are looking for in the future. And I know, Wendy, that many people have said, okay, we just won't do it, but then they still put their home office in there, or they have their in-laws move in without people knowing. We all know that. There's people building additions to their homes and building out accessory structures more and more through this COVID pandemic, that at a faster rate. That's which was brought up at the last meeting, because of these macro trends that we're only feeling the first peak of.
May I say two things? One, right now it's all mainly single family homes, except for something that's grandfathered in. And I think I would say that the majority of the people like that. I think that not everyone wants to have an extra dwelling. The other thing is, as far as COVID is concerned, we're not finished with COVID. I mean, the trends may go the other way. After being in a home with your whole family and working from home, people might be happy to go back to the business office, or might be happy to make some changes. And I can't predict the future. I'm just saying, I would hate to we're responding to a concern in our village at this point in time about what's happening with the accessory buildings in our current zoning. I understand the idea of looking forward and making changes for how people are now living, because of course a lot of those large barns were because people had carriages in them, and they're no longer carriage houses. Things do change. But I think right now the issue is, our zoning is for single family homes, and allowing dwellings and secondary dwellings and things of the like, and activities that go along with that do impact the neighborhood. And those people that bought in a neighborhood thinking they were in a single family home neighborhood, not a multi-family family home or dwelling neighborhood. And that I don't know if I'm repeating myself, but
I was just going to ask Rob and Harry. I mean, we were talking about the potential that some of these things are being built in a way that, could become a residence. Have you received complaints, or are you aware of, people doing what Nicole has said, going behind your backs and having like older parents or another family or college age young adult or Airbnb or whatever in accessory structures? Have you heard any of reports of this?
I have not personally, but I think if Harry can get on, he would be better in a better position to answer that. I know we've had some inquiries on a few properties that people have asked, what can I put in that accessory building? Can I convert it into an apartment? And just when people that are looking to buy a property, and we've told them no, and we've explained the code and they've moved on. And that's, I mean, literally only 1 or 2 phone calls in the last 3 years to me on that subject matter. And it's, I'm not sure to the extent of where we've seen anybody do anything behind our backs, but we did present the cases to P&Z of where we had some concern, and just not that people were doing things that were wrong, but where we see the intent of the code being kind of looked at in different directions. We want to be able to enforce whatever code is in place. We want to do that uniformly and fairly to the community, and we don't want to have any ambiguity to it. We also don't want to be spying on people. That's not the way we enforce things, to really try to assess whether they're truly living out of an accessory structure or not. It's a very difficult thing to try to put an absolute on. I know in the past, the village has looked at if you install kitchen features in a unit, although there's people that vary their standard of living that doesn't require a full kitchen in order to live in a structure or occupy it. So there's a lot of variation to it, and it's not an easy answer at all to decide that. So I mean, I think that's why we brought it to the board. We wanted to have this discussion and kind of get some guidance so that we can address what we're seeing in the field, not blatant problems and code violations, but some of the stretches of what we're seeing to make sure that it is the intent of what the village wants.
Harry, do you have any other, thanks, Rob. Do you have anything, Harry, to add to that, like experience-wise?
We've had some complaints, in the past about, possibly somebody living in a garage. But like I've said before, it's very difficult to catch that unless you stand at the house and police it 24/7 to see exactly what's going on behind closed doors.
So it sounds like there's complaints about people not wanting this in their neighborhood, as well as there, or some calls coming in suggesting, could I do this?
Correct.
And being told,
Is it
no.
complaints? Is it complaints, or is it, hey, you told me I couldn't do that and I just see my neighbor doing it?
It's just been inquiries. It hasn't really been a complaint. And I will also want to say that, we've seen accessory structures come through where people thought about putting living quarters in there. And we've told them right up front, you cannot use this, for residential purposes. And like I said before, once I sign off on it, do a final inspection, and what happens behind closed doors is their business. It's hard, unless you catch them in the act and you actually have a complaint.
Right.
Gary,
Yes.
so once you do your final walkthrough, you don't know what's going on. So some people may be doing it, but when you have told people, you can't make this into a dwelling, have those people abandoned their project or
Left the village?
Or left the, yes.
Some have left the village. Like I say, once I do a final inspection and I do document it on the final inspection that this cannot be used for residential uses, it's hard to say what happens behind closed doors. So
Yeah.
right now, all I can do is document it. I tell the architect or the designer, and it's written on the inspection. So property owners are made well aware of it. But like I say, things do happen underneath the radar.
We did have an application recently for a home office in an expanded accessory structure. We informed the applicant that home offices, the office space would have to be within the main dwelling structure. And they said, that's fine. I'll just rotate some of my users around, not a problem at all. And he said that would not be a problem for their application. That's one that comes to mind in the last month or two.
Judy, do you want to weigh in?
Sure. A lot has already been said. I believe that there are always ongoing changes to how people live and how people want to live and what people want in a house. Wendy's, as we've said, the expert on what people are looking for, and that changes from the Central Hall Colonial with lots of bedrooms to first floor masters to bringing family to live at home, to empty nests and repurposing space, to working at home. I think that goes all the time. And I agree with Nicole that there are changes in how we're living, and those are going to affect housing in the future. But I don't think we're there now in Chagrin Falls, Ohio. I believe that people move here because they want a certain kind of home, they want a certain kind of neighborhood, lifestyle, schools. And I don't see that that has changed dramatically, even with COVID. I think Wendy's exactly right that we wouldn't make any decision midway through COVID or partway through COVID, because I do see the pendulum swinging back. I was just reading Crane's Cleveland Business while I was eating dinner tonight, and there were some articles about employers who are saying, you know, this is fine to work at home for now, but that's not how we are going to keep our culture and build our company. And so we see that, you know, not continuing, and we're expanding. Other companies are saying, you know, work from home is great because we can get rid of property and save costs and all that. So I think we're in a period of great flux, but I think Chagrin Falls is a residential community, mostly a single family residential community. And I think that's why people come here. And I think that's why people choose to be here. And I don't think there's any lack of people who want to come here. We've seen that. You can't even, you can barely find a house to buy in the village or property to buy. So I don't think that's where we are now. And I don't think we can, I don't think we want to change. I think what's the moving that one single sentence up, and whether, as Dale suggested, we need to add a little clarification to it, moving of where it is in our you know, in the order of things, I think is a good idea to emphasize it. I don't think it should be removed and stricken from our code. I think we are a residential community, and I don't think it changes anything. What does change, which we haven't gotten to yet, and hopefully we will soon to talk about, is the you know, the dimensions and the numbers that are in here. And that's what I thought we would spend our time talking about here. So I do think we've discussed this thoroughly last meeting and this meeting.
Okay. So we'll
The last thing that I wrote to you that I'd like to bring up here, as thorough as we've all been, is the enforceability of this. Both the gentlemen in operations have admitted to the fact that once we've signed off on a project, this is not enforceable.
It is if a neighbor calls up and says, you know, there are, you know, numerous cars coming and going, and there's a lot of activity. This looks like it's, you know, another residence, and then it can be enforced because they can say, we have it in our code that you cannot use this as a dwelling.
And how many times has that caused us to actually make somebody change their accessory structure in the last 2 decades?
Well, the fact that it's
How many times has it actually, have we actually enforced it and made somebody change their behavior?
Harry just said that he has told people they cannot do this plan because it says in our code you can't have another dwelling.
And Harry has said, once I've signed off on it, I don't know what's done. I think with a quote was, you know, under the cover, no, it wasn't the cover doc, I don't remember the quote, but he said we don't know. Under the radar.
That can be for anything, Nicole. I could be, you know, selling cocaine out of my house. Nobody, you know.
My point, Patty, is it's not enforceable.
Well, then nothing's enforceable, and we should.
No, that's not true. That's not true. We know that things are enforceable. The point is, it's not really enforceable. Under the radar happens, and it's happening even when they say, oh, you can't do that. Oh, okay, fine. I'll build it. I'll put it in my bedroom instead. Really? That's what I would say too.
Nicole,
I mean, I guess my point is, my question is, how many times in the last decade, how many times has a neighbor complained and we have actually gone and had them change the usage of that building? It's got to be on record. How many times have we done it? Harry?
you have to give me some time to think about that. I can tell you one time where we had somebody using an accessory building for exercising, and it was being run as a business. We had to run them out of there, and it was due to complaints. Neighbors complained.
That's the difference. That's not what I'm talking about, but I know exactly who you're talking about because I actually went to his gym after he was out of his home. I didn't go in his garage. I know exactly what you're talking about. But any other than that, have we had somebody move their office out of a barn? Have we sold any houses, Wendy, that had home offices in barns?
Wait, we're not talking about offices. We're talking about dwelling.
They're both, I'm talking about both here. I'm
No.
actually talking about both. Have we enforced people to kick their parents, their aging grandparents and parents out of their accessory structures? Have we forced college students out of the $1 million accessory
Nicole, I think Harry, we don't know. And we understand what you're saying about the macro trends. And you said, we need to have a discussion about these things. And I think we have. We've heard you loud and clear. We've all talked about this.
I don't think a discussion is enough. I think we need to find out what our constituents really want. I said it at the last meeting, and I'm saying it again today. We need to actually poll. It was even suggested by Dale at the last meeting. We need to poll our community members. What would you want if there was a clean slate, knowing where you work today, what your parents are doing? What would you want to do with your property? And I'm not saying turning it into a 2-dwelling property and rent it out or sell it to somebody. I'm actually saying allowing it to be used by family members and or yourself as an office or an in-law suite.
Well, how are you going to do that? You can't.
How do you poll? How do you poll?
No, that's not what I'm saying. How do you say your in-laws can live there, but another family can't live there?
That's a legal thing that I'm sure Dale can figure out, or any of our legal counsel.
And how is that? You're quibbling about enforceability. How's that going to be enforced?
That's much easier to be enforced than renting it to somebody that's not a family member.
So you're going to knock on the door and get a blood test to prove that they're actually your relative instead of
this topic enough today. Can we maybe move on?
That's what I was trying to do. So I feel like you wanted a discussion about it, Nicole. We've discussed it. You say we need to know the opinion of what people want. You have your opinion. We've all.
I don't mean just the 5 of us. I mean all of the residents of Chagrin Falls. Not the 5 of us.
We don't poll the entire village on every issue that we come up with, whether, can you park a dump truck in your driveway, which is an issue that we dealt with a number of years ago. Should we poll the entire village?
I think that's a little different, Patty. Thank you.
No, but I mean, what do we say? Do we poll the village and say, should we eliminate single zoning such that any lot could have multiple homes on it? That's
not what we're saying. That's not what we're saying.
That's all this language in the code says. No portion of an accessory building may be occupied for residential use. That is saying that there may be 1 dwelling per lot in a single family district.
It's the same kind of language in a legal document saying that you can't sublet an apartment. So you say it cannot be occupied or rented or subletted, or it's that kind of language. I'm not a lawyer, but it can be done. Again, my opinion and what I stated last time and what Dale even suggested is we actually ask the village, and we don't just the 5 of us sit here and argue.
Dale?
Hey, Nicole, we beat this up enough, but let me just state one thing. I don't know when this ordinance went into effect about being occupied for residential use, but we can go back and certainly look it up. But I do know there was a problem, and the village added this language because there was a problem with people living in an accessory structure on Elm Court. Maybe Nancy knows a little bit more about it. And that was back in the late 70s, early 80s, I do believe, and the village changed the ordinance. So there is to prohibit residential use.
May I say something?
Sure.
So some of this that we're concerned about is because we used to have smaller, lower garages, and then we changed it to 18, I think, and then we changed it again. So if someone had a Victorian home that would have a carriage house, that they could have a garage that was in keeping. So with all of these changes, there are unintended consequences, and with the increased wealth in the things with these accessory buildings. And my concern is the unintended consequences. If we had kept the garages smaller, we wouldn't be having this conversation. But because people were requesting it, we made the change, we responded. But the unintended consequences of that is that people want to use them as dwellings. And our town is not multifamily, it's single family residences. So I want to be mindful of the unintended consequences of things that we allow, because we can't even imagine what will happen once we do allow this.
Right. Okay. Dale, can you chime in at all about, it just doesn't seem unusual to me for a key critical aspect of single family zoning districts to be that you can only have one dwelling per lot. Isn't that the defining feature of a single family zone district?
I wouldn't say that's 100% of the time, but it's a very high percentage. There was a time like in Cleveland Heights where a lot of people had big garages and they allowed people to have apartments above the garages, and then they got rid of that because it became a problem there. But the general concept of a single family district is that you don't allow a second dwelling on the same lot. There are other states in this country where that's not the case. Like, you go to Arizona or you go to Florida, and a lot of these homes have a second, smaller dwelling in the back. And those are contemplated as being something that development wants. So, I have no trouble saying that what we did in the 70s or 80s, eliminating accessory dwelling use for residential purposes, should not be permitted. I would say everywhere that we've represented any community, that's always been the case. I would say something else that came up in your discussion earlier. You don't zone based on what you think you can and can't enforce. You zone based on what you think is needed to protect the health, safety, morals, and general welfare. And if it's something that people get away with because you don't know about it, then, so that's the way it goes. But that doesn't mean you stop putting those provisions in your code. If they create a problem, you're going to know about it, and then you'll have the ability to enforce it. And the fact that you may not know about it quite often, and somebody could come into court and say, they shouldn't stop me from doing this because there's 20 other properties in this village that are doing it. All we got to do is say, well, we don't know about those 20. And so it's not like we intentionally waive this. So that helps, Yanni.
And there are, plenty of grandfathered instances of carriage houses that are used as dwellings, accessory structures used as dwellings, and they're grandfathered in for that use. And then I know on East Orange, somebody did a gorgeous, huge renovation of a historic home, and they wanted to have space for guests, and I think it was just guests, or maybe their older children. And so they ended up buying the house behind them that backed up to it, the one on on Cottage. Sorry, it's Cottage and Orange that back up to each other. So they, they found a way to do what they wanted to do, which was have a smaller, guest kind of house. Anyways, I agree that I think we've spoken about this enough, about the concept of residential use. The other things that we were talking about in terms of these accessory structures were all more, talking about specific ways to prevent them from becoming residences. So I imagine, Nicole, you would not want to entertain any of those, but they were things like, limiting sanitary sewers so there couldn't be bathrooms or shower kind of facilities. I don't know how you exactly limit kitchen after Harry's final inspection. We were talking about size, footprint, and then height. Since there is the footprint restriction, a lot of this seems to be happening on a second floor. So as Wendy alluded to, and what Nancy's got changed here has to do with a change to the code that was relatively recent, where wasn't it 15 feet originally, Nancy?
Originally 15 feet, and then we raised it to 18 feet. And
Right.
then I think it was the Architecture Review Board who suggested the possibility of a higher roof pitch to match the house, and then we move it further from the property line.
Right. So
I'm just suggesting to lower it a couple feet, and if that's not high enough for somebody, they can get a variance, or request a variance. So,
Harry, are most things being built to the maximum these days, to this 22-foot?
Pretty close to it, yes.
yeah.
Because they're trying to match the predominant roof pitch of the main house. And that's an architectural review board.
Yeah, I know, but they're
also trying to maximize space, I imagine.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, one nearby here doesn't match the house pitch. It doesn't, so
Right.
they
That's
don't
an
always do
APR thing. They're supposed to be looking at the roof pitches.
Yeah, but they don't always. So, I mean, listen, this was just a suggestion to try to tone down the size a little bit without being
overbearing
and excessive. And so if they need, we could also require moving further from the property line than we do. But I didn't suggest that. We could.
The other thing, but that doesn't change. The reason this all came up was because of potential use of the building due to its space. Increasing the setbacks, will help maybe impact on the neighbors, but it's not going to change the potential use.
Right.
I wonder if we just said that the greater height can be approved. It says to permit a roof pitch, or if we said only in a situation to permit, just try to make it more, so that it's what we intended, that it's only if they really would have a strange squat looking garage if they didn't make it higher.
But this already isn't squat. The 15-foot was squat.
Well, it depends. It depends. 18 feet might look squat next to a tall Italianate or Victorian house. I don't know.
Again, you're gonna roll your eyes, but I think this is another arbitrary controlling thing that goes against what the village is actually doing and what our other committee, the ARB or ABR, is recommending.
We could have left it at 15 feet.
Yeah, we changed it. We made it more lenient.
Not that long ago.
Because of the need and the recommendation of the ABR.
May I say something?
No. Well,
Yeah.
Go ahead, Wendy.
I actually have an 18-foot. And when we did ours, Harry would know was at 98. So
Before me.
yeah. Oh yeah, that's right. Anyways, I mean, it's in keeping with our house, and there's plenty of space for storage. and it's a hip roof, so it doesn't look like it's short and squatty. So I think there's plenty of room with, I mean, from my experience, but other people want other things. But I mean, the way to know if this is an issue is that if we start getting a lot of variances.
Well, they're not getting variances because they're allowed to go to 22.
Right, but if you lower the roof line. you
But
know,
Wendy, the way to know is by actually looking at what people are building, and what everybody has said is they are mostly building up to the 22-foot limit that's in the code. So we don't need to wait for people to say, wait a minute, I want 22 feet. We already know that they're building 22 feet and the ABR is recommending
The
it.
code, it's only allowed to match the pitch of the house. The actual rule is 18 feet.
And when we didn't allow the 22 feet, when it was 15 feet, I don't know, it was one case that sort of blew this all up out of the water. I don't know, like, were people going crazy about not having tall enough garages before, Harry? Or was it like the one garage that caused the Chandler garage?
Was the West Orange the first one? But I know the one
That was different. That was different, Patty.
Okay.
Yeah.
Judy's got her hand up. Let's let her talk.
I think this is a great example of what Wendy referred to as unintended consequences. I remember when we had lengthy discussion, and it was over one issue. It wasn't over a groundswell demand for higher garages. We were trying to be sensitive to the architectural aesthetics of how garages, and we had big, long conversation about it. And we didn't think about the others, the unintended consequences. The other side of it was that I think as you relax regulations in any part of life, as in zoning, people will take advantage of that. Some people will take advantage of that, and probably people have done that. But I think that had we been able to look in the future and said, now we're going to come a couple of years from now and have sort of the backlash of this issue, we wouldn't have ever done it. I don't think we did it as such a concerted thing that we had to do. We did it as an accommodation, and I think it was a mistake.
And I agree with you, Judy.
I feel like the 20 feet, I mean, the 18 has already kind of solved the issue, and then to add more to match a roof pitch, I think if you did get that 20-foot height on a 2-car garage, there's still, like Wendy said, with hers being 18, there's still space on the second floor that you can use. Right. And with 20, there would definitely be, and it would be enough to use, in a lot of different ways, but maybe not necessarily as a dwelling, which is what some of us were thinking is not something we want. So I think this is a good suggestion, a good compromise. It doesn't drastically change anything. The moving number 7 to the beginning doesn't change anything. It just, it's just moving it to another place, so it's a little bit more visible. And then going from 22 to 20, I don't think is going to be a huge hardship. And like Nancy says, if you really do have a home that a 20-foot garage is going to look super squat, or you, in our home, we don't have any usable basement space. So, if you wanted extra space over your garage to use as a bonus room or storage or whatever, you could seek a variance for that. I don't know how much more usable floor space do you get, Harry, going from 20 to 22? Or how much would you lose if you have like a 2-car garage with a peak at 20 versus 22? Are you going to lose a ton of floor space?
You're going to lose a little bit. It all depends on the size of the structure.
Yeah.
For starters.
Yeah. Plus, if it has the shed dormers going out on both sides, like a lot of these structures have now, that adds a lot of headspace. So. I think there are still a lot of ways people could use the second floor in a meaningful way, but without, having 22.
Can I add one other item to the mix? I don't want to make this more difficult, but part of the conversation that Nancy and Rob and Julie and I had is that in 112504, it says the maximum, the total area can't exceed 700 square feet. And we realized that that really only meant the footprint around the first floor. So somebody could have a second floor that would be 700 square feet, and then you'd have a 1,400 square foot livable or usable space. Hang on, Nicole. So we were talking about changing a definition so that that 700 square feet included whatever you could get on a second floor. So think about that as well when you're discussing this. If that's not what you want to do, then that's fine. We don't have to change any of the definitions. But right now, 700 square feet does not mean that the total usable space is 700.
So
Yeah,
Julie had put together a whole big thing on area, and she's out of town. So I didn't suggest we talk about it because she's probably the best person to, and she and Dale are the best people to talk about it. So
I'm against changing that. I feel like, if it's not massively looming over your neighbors and you're going to use the space up in the peak of your garage for your own personal use, whether it's sitting there with your laptop or it's, riding an exercise bike on your own or whatever, I feel like that I don't see that that's causing a problem for the village. I see a problem thinking that the space might be a dwelling. I see a problem seeing that it might be a retail or service establishment where you'd be having a lot of people coming and going. But if Wendy wanted to, put some drywall and carpeting up in the space above her garage and paint all day or whatever, then, I don't see a problem with that. So I don't understand why. I don't think the 700 square feet is actually already kind of a small area. Like I have a 2-car garage and we were not able to expand it or put another accessory structure on our property because the 2-car garage is up to that limit.
Well, remember, this is just for a detached.
Right. Mine's
Garage.
detached,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
a lot of the village is detached.
Right.
I do want to say that there is no space above my garage. There's
Okay. Okay.
rafters.
No, but I'm saying if you wanted to make it, no,
There's no way. I don't think you can't do it.
there's no headspace.
There's no, yeah, it's because of the roof lines. Yeah.
But if you had a different kind of roof, could you do something like that?
Yeah, possibly.
Okay, Judy?
I think a lot of what we've worked, when we talked about this originally, and a lot of other conversations we had were about the mass of a building on the property. So when we talk about setbacks, when we talk about size of buildings, when we talk about height, it was at a time, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, when one of the big concerns was the McMansions and the big properties coming in next to, in some cases, smaller properties, and how the overall look and feel of the neighborhood. So I think a lot of these aren't so much about whether you have 1 or 2 extra feet on, of space, but they were more about how a mass of a building impacts the feel of that house on a piece of property, particularly where we have so many neighborhoods with small lots and close property lines.
I remember it was a long time ago, on Solon Road, there were a couple of big houses that the whole McMansion thing really came to the front and forefront, and we never got to the point of having a total square footage sort of regulation. I don't remember the whole nitty gritty of it, Nancy, but in the end, it was basically setbacks, height, were what we felt like we could do to control it the best we could. Do you remember anything about that, Nancy? Like,
I do, and I know we talked about it a lot and ended up leaving things the way they were.
yeah,
We had talked about changing the coverage requirement and that kind of thing, and
Yeah.
and we did.
for main buildings.
Right. So
I just mention it just to say that a lot of the conversation we have had for many years
Yeah,
is about, you know, as we've been talking about tonight, the changing nature of housing, what people want, and how you square that with, you know, existing dwellings that have a certain amount of space, and
Yeah.
you know what it winds up, what a street winds up looking at. Like, and as Dale said earlier, I think that is exactly the charter of planning and zoning, to look at how, you know, a community is and grows and develops for the enjoyment and the house values and the lifestyle of all of the residents. And so you're always going to have somebody who says, you know, we all do. I mean, who among us wouldn't say, oh, if I could do this, you know, I would like to do that, but that may not be for the good of the community.
you know, and I think it's very clear that as much as some parts of our code, some of us may hate or not like or feel is unfair or whatever, seems like Chagrin Falls has fared pretty well through having our code in place. It seems like a pretty desirable place to live, and property values are high and houses fly off the market. Okay, well, I guess we could, if there's an appetite to talk about area, we could wait until Julie's back from vacation and talk about that further, or other fixes like, you know, talking about utilities and sewer and all of that. But my
Hey, Patty,
my preference would be to make a motion based upon the changes, the very simple changes Nancy recommended.
well, again, we're sort of not making a motion to give this to council yet. We're setting it aside.
Okay. I didn't know. So this is going to be like a new way of operating where because for so long, like we.
Not necessarily, but for
Okay.
now, since we're reviewing so many different things,
Okay.
rather than passing them on one at a time, that if
Okay.
we lump them together, so we just would be able to have one public hearing and not have, I mean, otherwise so far we would be having 3 public hearings if we did this all separately.
Okay. So we'll,
We'll keep this on the agenda.
And Dale probably could like rearrange it, you know, and renumber it properly.
okay. Does anybody have anything else they'd like to, you know, if we revisit this again next time, I feel like we've kind of hashed it to death, and, but if there's, so I'd like to move forward with it next time around.
Patty,
Yeah.
one thing you guys might want to take a look at when you're talking about accessory structures is a definition or accessory structures for generators and air conditioners. Lately, we've had people wanting to put air conditioning and generators in their accessory structures. And I think when that was crafted, nobody thought about air conditioning in a garage. It's mainly for the main building setbacks. So I don't know if you want to look at that.
So you're saying they want to have that capacity in these buildings, but the units are outside, just like they are for main
Yeah,
dwelling.
what they're doing is like the condensers.
Yeah.
It's like for main buildings, you know, the condensers can only be located in the side or rear yards, but have to meet the
Yeah.
main building setbacks. Well, now we're getting people wanting to put air conditioning, the condensers or generators outside detached garages.
Okay, so we need to add a section to say
So I'm
something.
just saying, you may want to look at, it might be fine, but it's something you might want to consider, because this past year, I've had more people decide to put in air conditioning or generators on a detached garage or by their detached garage.
Again, more and more means more and more demand.
Well, and I think Harry's point is, we just need some code language for those units on an accessory structure, because right now we can't allow them to be attached to the, or right next to the accessory structure. They have to meet the setback of the main building. So if you wanted to consider something like must meet the setback of the accessory building, which is in the same kind of, tone as they are for a main building, those are the kind of discussions we'd like to have. Not that we're forbidding it, but that we need to be able to allow them to be placed in a reasonable place.
And our,
Can we ask Julie to take a look at this for us?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that would be the best thing to do.
and are you unlimited in how many generator and air conditioning units you can have on a lot?
Nope, it just has to meet the setbacks.
So I could have,
You could have 2 or 3 next to your house, as long as it meets the setbacks and of the main building, and it's, either in the side or rear yard.
and if I had 2 accessory structures, each of those could have a
Poss-
generator and an air conditioner.
Possibly.
Okay,
So I'm just throwing it out there, while
Yeah.
you're talking about this.
sure. Any other particular, I know you talked about that, we've talked about the sanitary sewer. Any other particular
No,
item?
those are the things that I'm seeing coming around, so
Okay. Okay,
thank you.
I think it's a good idea to have Julie look at it,
Sure.
and we can talk about that next time. But I would just suggest for all of these things, it makes perfect sense to me to not act on them. But by not acting on them, I would hope that we don't start all over again, which sometimes we tend to do. So now we've had discussions a couple times on a couple of these things. If we're, if we can leave this meeting as we did with the first 2 items, saying, okay, we've had a robust discussion about it, and when we take it up again, it will be for the purpose of a vote, and then we can vote, and it'll go whatever way it goes. But
So
I would hope that we don't spend
yeah,
more time
Yeah.
talking about the things we've already talked
we'll
about.
try to limit discussion to new aspects, like if there's anything to say about the air conditioners and generators or area requirements, that sort of thing. Nicole?
The only thing that I keep pointing out or want to reiterate is what was brought up last time, and why we are discussing this again this time is to get opinions of people other than the 5 of us somehow before we make a vote.
Well, I think council is the ultimate, they're the elected representatives of the village, and I think they're the ones who we would recommend something to, and it would be their place to say, I think this is overstepping, I think we need to throw out our entire code and let whatever happen in accessory structures, whatever. Just like they've done to us multiple times when we were talking about limiting tree cutting. They said, nope, we're not interested in that's overstepping, or the whole, where you can put your play set. So, I think that's their place. I think it would be hard to get an accurate opinion from the entire village. It would be very hard to have everybody consider all the aspects and implications and nuances of the code in a meaningful way. So that's my opinion. I think you'd get very few respondents, and you'd probably have respondents that had a particular bone to pick one way or the other. And they may or may not be educated opinions. So we could have hearings on it, and council would have, could have hearings where interested parties could come and voice their opinions. That's how pretty much every issue ever gets dealt with, is there's a public hearing, and if you care about it, you show up and say something about it or talk to your council representatives. So that's, I don't see how, as much as, I want to do what is the will of all the people in the village, I don't think having a Facebook survey or a website survey is something we want to get into for every issue that we deal with. Anybody else want to comment on that?
We're appointed to this board, and it's our responsibility to make those decisions and judgments. We have a planner who helps us, and we do what we think is the best thing for the village. It goes to council, and council has a public hearing, and that's the way the process works. And if somebody doesn't like something, they can file a referendum on what council does. So that is our
opinion on that.
On planning and zoning, to make these decisions.
Wendy, do you have an opinion on that?
Well, I was going to say that can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. We have made, we've had strategic plans for the village in the past, and where we've looked forward. And I think that's something that the mayor and council may want to look into, as far as reaching out to the community for what they want for the future. And then if there's some type of mandate within that document, I think that that would be actionable. But I think that the council and our mayor will have to have an appetite for that.
I guess we did a comprehensive plan
It's been a while.
review in 2011.
Yeah.
I can send that out to everybody, just so you can, because I know that was part of what you were talking about in your email to me, Nicole, was like, big picture kind of ideas.
And I think there's been great changes to our streetscape. Was probably, I don't know, Nancy can speak to that. I believe streetscape came out of some, discussion about how to maintain Main Street and make it more viable. And we made changes to address that. But I do think that some of this has to trickle down. It has to trickle up and trickle down. I think our mayor and our council, they may, that's something that they may want to look at, but they may not be hearing anything about it.
Yeah, I'll send this comprehensive plan out to all of you guys, just to see, what it consists of, and if you think, it's something we want to do an update to.
Was that our mandate, or was that through for council?
I can't remember how, Nancy.
I don't remember.
Involved in that, or?
Julie would probably know, because she probably has notes on it.
Yeah, I can't remember like how it all works, like charter versus this comprehensive plan. It's only like a 5-page long document. It's not a huge thing.
Well, this is the year for charter review.
Yeah, so there's the charter and there's this comprehensive plan, but and a lot of it is, nice language, like we intend to, our goal is this, preserve this, foster this, and it all sounds great, but it's getting down to these, how we deal with tiny details like a height or this or that will actually accomplish those things or go against them. So anyways, I'll send that out. So we'll wait on this, and then there's was also kind of in the same, along the same lines. Judy and Nicole, do you guys still have your hands up for this?
No.
Okay.
I'll take it
Nicole,
back.
do you still have your hand up? Can we move on? Okay. So the next thing on the agenda was about, Nancy and Rob, you can chime in if you'd prefer, but I think it was because a request to put a barber shop into a space zoned office on Bell Street. And it was approved, but then council questioned it, and it's not happening in the end, I guess. But Nancy, did you want to give some background on some, having to do with uses in different districts?
Well, so they needed to have a use variance in order to do this. So they applied for a use variance to put a barber shop into one of the offices of the office building on Bell Street. And BZA approved it, and council reversed that decision and denied the use variance. But I suggested at the time that we maybe take a look at this section and consider whether we wanted to do a, possibly code amendment that might permit, personal services within an office built within a multi-use office building or something like that. It's something to think about. That's why I suggested that we take a look at it. I mean, we're not going to really decide anything tonight. There's
Right.
no language for it, and Julie hasn't looked at it yet.
Wendy, do you want
That's
to?
kind of what I was thinking, is that maybe it's something to think about.
Okay.
Do we have a definition for service?
Like retail service, we do in our code. It's in one of the other sections.
So to me, like, in, talking about trying to change with the times and keep our business districts viable and vibrant, I think that's an area where we could,
Is
in my
there,
opinion, loosen restrictions a bit.
is there a shortage of retail space available?
It wouldn't seem that way driving around.
Yeah, I don't think there is. That just happens to be a very small space. It was about 293 square feet, this unit there, and it was the right space for what the applicant was looking for to start his business.
Mhm.
So I know you're not supposed to have office space in the retail or central shopping district. Although we've given variances for that, like Travelon, that travel agency that used to be a furniture
That wasn't the
store.
variance. We changed the zoning for that.
Okay.
We took that out of the central
right.
shopping district.
Right.
So-
But there's a couple of other instances where it seems like that is happening somewhat. Whereas having retail going to office, if there's parking for it and it's already sort of a commercial use, I don't see.
Well, I'm concerned about a creep of retail, because once it's in, then it'll happen. I mean, then it could expand. And I think we need to look at the location and whether we want retail on Bell Street by that's Bell Street by Phil Mathian.
Just east of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you've already got like the whole little plaza there with Ara and the pizza place and the dry cleaners and a gas station, and right across the streets.
But retail changes traffic.
I'm sorry?
I mean, egress and things of that sort. It changes how the traffic flows.
Nancy, what were the opinions voiced at council that reversed the decision to allow the barber shop to go into the office space?
Well, they reversed the decision it was for a use variance, and they decided that they didn't want to grant a use variance. That request didn't fit the parameters or the requirements of a use variance.
Which says that, I think, probably that, doesn't it say like the space can't possibly be used for what it was originally zoned?
Right, that's one of the.
They also said that they felt that any use changes should be something that goes through planning and zoning and comes as an overall addition to what would be allowed in that district and not piecemeal through a variance process.
That's why I voted against the concept of having use variances. We never used to be able to get.
Yes, I remember that. Yes.
That was a pretty major thing that we now have use variances.
Yeah, so
Anyway.
I guess I wouldn't be in favor of wholesale allowing retail in an office building. You know, the thought was maybe a personal service type business, nail salon, beauty salon, in a very small portion of a building. You know, maybe 5% or 10%. I mean, it's sometimes not unusual, at least in some of the bigger buildings in other places, to have a small delicatessen, candy shop, newspaper shop.
I know to support that comment, I know in a lot of doctors' office buildings on the ground floor are personal service, like a barber shop or a beauty salon.
Or an eyeglasses store.
Eyeglass place, something that supports, you know, the overall main use of the building as an office.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly wouldn't suggest a wholesale big change, just something very limited, maybe a personal service. I didn't look at that definition, but, and it's just something to think about. I mean, we're not going to make a decision on that tonight, but it came up in the conversation in this particular situation. So I thought we ought to discuss it, take a look at it.
Wendy?
Some of these buildings also allow breakfast and lunch places to serve the people in the building. I don't think there's anything in the village that's big enough that you would need to warn it, but those are the kind of things that could creep into this process if you don't keep it very narrow.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like was it Gates Mills Towers or whatever it is across from now it's Hillcrest Medical Building. I mean, that was a huge building with lots of people working there, and it was hard to cross the street to go get lunch. I mean, that's different than in our village.
Yeah, and I'm not suggesting a restaurant in there. I mean, you know, certainly we don't want to give out the opportunity to dilute our retail business district and our central shopping district.
I mean, we do have retail vacancies right now.
Yeah. I guess the one thing I can see about it is the size that office buildings could have, you know, a small little area that they're not using that could be carved out for, you know, a very small business. But I agree. I don't think it doesn't seem like it's been a huge problem. This is the first. Well, we did have, remember the Masonic Temple, next to the Masonic Temple, that space that, what was that somebody wanted?
They wanted a travel agency.
Yeah, they wanted to put an office into that area space. And we said, well, you either have to rezone it or get a use variance. And they ended up just not doing it. And sure enough, a retail use took it over. So I think, you know, just because one thing doesn't necessarily work out doesn't mean we need to change.
Yeah, the property owner didn't
zoning.
Zone his property is what it was.
Right.
So
Rob, can you put up just this the office district, the permitted uses that are there right now?
Sure, give me 1 second.
Yeah, thanks.
I got that on the screen now.
Mm-hmm. You can have a fitness center.
Yeah,
That's interesting.
And a veterinary clinic.
Yeah.
But it has to be enclosed with sound insulation.
Mhm,
don't want barking dogs and
mhm.
interrupting everyone.
Harry, Rob, do you feel like this is, have you had a lot of requests about stuff, zoning, I mean, variances, use variances for
I've
office versus retail versus service?
No,
No,
not this one. I think the last one was down on, right there at Solon and Maple Street, the old gas station.
Oh, yeah.
no,
Oh, yeah.
Right.
that would be the only three, that one, Masonic Temple, and this one.
Okay.
Well,
And they
that's
all seem to have resolved and life is moving on without having any need for a big change to the code. So, okay, well, maybe everybody can just, you know, read through this and give some thought to it for next time.
Let me add something that the property owner mentioned. Because it's going to be harder for office building owners to rent out for office because of the change that's occurred from the virus, they're saying that we need to give them some flexibility to add other uses in the building that are traditionally compatible. For example, like in my office building, we had a barber shop forever there. And there could be other personal service uses that would serve the people in the building as well as the local community. So I think what they're asking you to consider is, we're not going to necessarily be able to fill up all these office buildings in town all the time if it's strictly offices. So think about other uses, and you could cap it, as Nancy suggested, so that it could be some percentage of the total square footage.
Mhm. I think maybe Judy said it earlier that, I think we've been in the pandemic for a year and I guess nobody really knows how it's going to play out in the end. I'm not sure we want to make big changes to our zoning based on predictions of whether people are going to be going back to offices or not. We could, because then you say the same thing about retail. You could say, well, the nature of shopping is changing, so we need to give more leniency to the central shopping district or the retail business district. Definitely something to think about, but I don't think we're at some critical point. This 200 square foot space on Bell Street, the request for that, I don't know that it's indicating we need to make a huge change, but I haven't given it a lot of thought or looked at it too carefully, but maybe everybody could and look between the different districts that we have and see what uses you think might fit to be added to the office district if we wanted to. I'm actually kind of surprised by some of them that are in here as permitted uses. Like if you'd allow a fitness center in an office district, why would you not allow a salon, I guess?
Where Rob, did you find the definition of retail services?
Yes, I had that up. I had that up last.
Okay,
It's
I'll
in
find
the,
it again for you.
let me see
It's an
that.
110718.
Sorry, I apologize. I just wanted to look at that again.
Yeah, it's an establishment primarily engaged in providing direct consumer services at the site of the business, but not including offices.
Okay,
And then there's examples of those in the central shopping district, 1137.
Right.
Let's
and I
see.
guess other than potentially taking tenants away from spaces in retail business or central shopping district, what is the harm that would be seen by having portions of an office building occupied by one of these personal service establishments. Just more people coming and going, is that the thought, or?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about, how it would impact traffic and parking and stuff like that. That doesn't mean it's, good or bad, but just it
Right.
might be
Well,
different.
I mean, if you limited it to a very small space, after all,
Right, the percentage. I like that idea of a percentage of the
I mean,
building.
an office there could have people coming and going too. So,
Sure, of course.
at least to me, it's more not wanting to dilute the retail
Right.
central
Right.
retail core of the village or shopping district.
I could have Julie take a look at some code language to see what
Okay.
might be out there on that if you like.
And it sounds like it wasn't like council said, this is a horrible idea, we don't want this kind of business in that kind of building or in that kind of district. They were just saying that it's not, it shouldn't, it sounds like they were kind of philosophically opposed to the process of getting the use variance, and that it should be something planning and zoning decides as a somewhat planning type of.
Right. It was the concept of a use variance that they voted against.
Hmm.
So,
Okay.
in this
Okay.
situation.
And then I think our last thing was lighting, which, when I was saying, what do you guys, if you have things we need to talk about, and, that we still have our list from way back, that kept getting interrupted by various things, primarily Brick House, needing a lot of attention. So there's a lot of things that, are still on there that was lighting that, Nancy suggested we look at, we have a section, we added a section to the code during our code overhaul because we really didn't have anything. So I guess the idea is to review it and see if there are things we want to change about it. Wendy had a discussion with a lighting person who she felt like could give us a good idea of what some of these numbers mean, because that was when we were talking about this, it was one of the things was, what does this mean? Like however many lumens. And I think you identified a mistake, like a typo, where it was like 1,000-fold more than it should have been or something. I don't know. Anyway, so I was thinking of we should invite this person to attend our next meeting to maybe weigh in on some aspects of this. Nancy, did you have anything in particular you wanted to, who are these edits from?
This is the last thing from Julie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so this is from
Yeah,
Julie, it's the last thing that she did. So, I mean, for one thing, we hadn't finished it. We sort of, had some things that were stuck in there and didn't finish it, but there was an issue. I don't know whether it was resolved or not. A lighting issue of light shining into a neighbor's property. And so I thought we ought to take a look at this and finish it up, complete the light section. And, since we didn't really resolve a lot of the things that we had talked about,
Right. And I know there were some numbers about lumens or.
Yeah, that was part of it. But then the general conversation of and we didn't know how, was it 75,000 lumens or something, what that looked like. So it just kind of was left hanging, and these were the final edits that we had done.
Okay. Yeah, I totally.
I sort of forgot about it, and I had a bunch of versions, so I asked Julie to send me the most current one, which is what this is it, and this is what she sent.
Okay.
I mean, it's just to start taking a look at it. I didn't think we would really talk about it tonight.
Okay.
But hopefully we can, get it back and finish this chapter.
Okay. Wendy, do you have anything specific to say from your conversations? Or do you want to wait?
I mean, it's been a while since I spoke with
Yeah.
him. I just know that at the time, he was saying that that the technology is changing all the time and there's ways to maybe light your house without impacting the other neighbors but the lumen number that I gave him, he thought that was really high. So I just think it would be helpful to have him discuss, because I think that's where the trend is going. So go from 0 houses, 10, 20 houses on a street having one single light and no lights in there at the end of their driveway, to the street, 50% of the street going to uplighting and more accent lighting. That does change
Yeah.
the light pollution.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, maybe could everybody kind of try to go through this, as carefully as you are willing to, and maybe if you want to send things in to me before next meeting, I can pass them on to Julie so that we can have a, as productive as a conversation as possible next time. And hopefully move this on. And, we could feasibly have, 4 or 5 things ready to go to council, I guess.
And is someone gonna reach out to,
I'll probably have you do that.
Okay.
Or unless you want me to, and you can share contact information. I'll talk to you about it. We can decide what to. Nancy, is that okay if we, can we show this? Well, this chapter is, the chapter is existing in our code. Can we have?
This isn't.
Right. Can we
Yeah,
share this with an expert in the field?
Sure, I think you can.
Yeah. I mean, we do have a village engineer too, who
Right. Yep, we can do
would be able
both.
to help us with some of this.
Sure.
But I think he was supposed to do something on
Yeah.
that.
I mean,
Or-
unless Dale has some issue with getting an outside opinion, I don't suppose we're in a position to pay anybody for an outside opinion, but.
No, I don't think, would this person expect payment?
No, I was just thinking he could explain
Yeah.
what people are putting in and what actually, and like, for example, if you have, what I was asking him was if the code read, you are allowed to do, I don't know what the number was, 7,500 lumens. And you wanted to maximize that because people tend to maximize things. What would that look like? Like, how many lights is that around the property? And I need to get an idea of what that looks like. And he was saying he was explaining to me how many lights that would be and what typical wattage and things of that sort. So that's what I thought would be helpful, is if you're looking at the code, and I was asking if he had some visuals. Like, if, I don't know, in part of his business, if someone wanted to, if we were to say, here's a typical village colonial or Victorian, and they want to do some uplightings, uplighting, what's the maximum and what kind of lumens is that, so that we're being realistic about what our code says. Because I don't know, and one of the things that someone else pointed out to me is that there's commercial lighting and there's residential lighting, and we want to make sure that it's clear between the two. There's a difference between the two.
Okay. No, that would be good. All right, I think that's it. Does anybody else have anything they want to bring up? Okay, if not, anybody? No. Okay, thank you, and we'll be adjourned until next month.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.